Welcome to North of 60. I'm Heidi Schweighofer. As I've gotten older, I have noticed with family and friends a change in appearance. It seems like it's two extremes right now. One extreme is very thin and complaints of not having an appetite, and the other extreme is gaining weight despite taking that daily walk or any other kind of exercise. I contacted Western Reserve Hospital because I wanted to talk to someone who could talk to us about nutrition as we get older. And I feel truly like I hit the jackpot with Dr. Valerie Johnson. Dr. Johnson is a board-certified internal medicine physician. She received her medical education in Ohio and her residency at Rush. She is also certified, and I want to make sure I get this correct, certified in culinary medicine. So with this wonderful combination of things, we can now learn a lot today about what we need to eat, what we need to be aware of, and what happens as we get older nutritionally. Thank you so much for coming, Dr. Johnson.
Thank you so much for having me, Heidi. I'm happy to be here.
Now, before we even start with the questions, tell me a little bit, what made you decide to pick these two specialties, especially the nutrition-focused one?
Yeah, so when I entered medical school, I knew I wanted to go into primary care, and internal medicine was the route I knew I would take because it was adult-focused. And so I studied in Ohio up in Toledo, went out to Chicago for my residency and trained at Rush and had a great experience out there. And then came back to Ohio and started practicing here. I grew up in the area, so I wanted to come back here. And after I was in practice in primary care for about, 7 or 8 years, as I looked at everything around me and what I was doing and what I was treating, and I saw, obviously how much illness I was treating, I wanted to think just a little more about wellness and how I could incorporate that into my practice.
Good.
And one piece, honestly, in medical school, residency, every training that we've had, there's not a lot of nutrition training. And, we all eat every single day. This is what I say to my patients, it's one thing you do every single day, you eat every single day, so why aren't we talking about this more? So I chose to take a culinary medicine route, which focuses a little bit more on macronutrients. So we talk about actually foods, not so much protein, carbs, micronutrients. It's more a kind of a real life application. So a way that I felt in the exam room, I would be able to get a lot of bang for my buck speaking to patients rather than focusing on, how many carbs, how many protein grams a day.
God.
Right. Right. So I'd be able to talk to them more about what kind of meals, what's our big picture, that sort of thing.
Are there many of you out there?
They're not. It's a newer certification inside of medicine, and mine it's from the it's the New Orleans Tulane Medical School.
Oh,
and
sure.
so I actually, I actually got to go down to New Orleans and do a cooking course for a few days.
Oh,
I know.
How lucky you are.
I know, it was wonderful. And it was a online course with a board certification exam at the end. A number of lectures from different nutritionists, physicians, chefs as well, to kind of give a big round picture. So there's not many of us out there, but it's certainly growing, and I hope to promote some awareness about it and get more people involved.
Oh, now you don't just treat seniors. You must treat. Do you treat eating disorders, or is that a whole separate?
Yes, I can. Typically, someone with an eating disorder would need to see a psychiatrist and
Okay.
kind of that piece of things. But absolutely, they can see a nutritionist, a dietitian, or myself as well to speak to them about some of the different kind of the comprehensive care that they require.
Well, let's talk about seniors because this program is for seniors. And one of the things, I've got a million questions, but let's start with metabolism. So I hear that, I understand, and I have recognized this, that our metabolism slows down as we get older, and the effects of exercise perhaps to help with calorie evening is not as profound.
Yes. And that happens not just as part of the aging process. It's actually, we call it a secondary aging phenomenon. And this occurs because as time goes on, we start to become a little less active. Our muscle mass decreases. It may be a result of carrying too much weight over time or too little weight over time, and it can be due from medications that we've taken over a long period of time. So it absolutely is its own independent phenomenon, and we see that people absolutely have less of a metabolism. The biggest piece of that is that, you know, your metabolism is, there's no magic metabolism formula out there. Like, I can't, you know, measure anything on you and tell you what.
And yet online you can find
Yes.
how to measure your own metabolism.
Right.
With
There's many tools online, but none that are really useful in this case. Because your metabolism is two big pieces. One is your active metabolism, so that's, you know, when you talk about going out and walking and exercising and snowshoeing, whatever it is that you do. And the second piece is kind of your resting basal metabolic rate. And that is what is determined by your body, your system, your muscle mass. So the biggest piece is, as we get older, typically we move less. You know, it even happens we see from high school on. In high school, everybody's athletic and active, and then as we get older and everybody has jobs and responsibilities.
And you're sitting at a desk.
Exactly.
That's right.
And it becomes an option to exercise as opposed to kind of an incorporation.
Yes.
And so we see less muscle mass. And we know for sure that, you know, muscle burns far more calories than fat tissue. So we have less muscle mass, and then we have less calories just burning as we sit. And that's the biggest piece to kind of take home about the change in metabolism as we get older. It also becomes much harder to build muscle as we get older.
Yes.
Absolutely. So when we talk about, you know, different dietary needs, typically, and I said I don't really talk much about micronutrients, but in terms of protein, that's one of the biggest things we need to build muscle. And for you know, patients under 65 is typically like 0.8 grams per kilogram a day. That's their amount. As we get older, it's more than a gram per kilogram a day. We see that increases. Yeah, because it's so difficult to build the muscle, so you need more of the building blocks to be able to build the muscle, to be able to maintain it, to help your metabolism.
And yet we don't, at least I'll speak for myself and my husband, we don't think in terms of increasing our protein during the day. We eat our usual stuff, and I think it tends to be more carbohydrates than it does protein. And you're making me think maybe we should be inverting that a little bit.
Well, certainly thinking about a little more protein, and then thinking about the type of carbohydrate that it is you're taking in. That's the key. Carbs aren't bad, but really fiber is the key behind it all in terms of the carbs.
Okay.
So looking to really focus on the fiber, is why I always tell patients is focus on fiber. So whenever you're deciding between 2 loaves of bread or 2 products at the grocery store, go by fiber. You know, I have a lot of training in reading nutrition labels, and sometimes I sit there and look at them and think, I don't know what the healthier option is, because there's so many things on there. And you know, they say whole wheat, which is not whole grain. It's all very misleading.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. So looking at the fiber content is a pretty fail-safe way to pick kind of the healthiest choice.
Do we lose our appetites as we get older? Or does it stay the same? I hear people say, oh, it just doesn't taste as good to me as it used to, or I just don't find myself, I've noticed this myself again, I don't find myself hungry early in the morning like I used to want at breakfast, and now I eat breakfast, but it's not my desire. Is that common?
Yeah, and that's another real thing that happens as we're all getting older. Part of it is because of that kind of basal metabolic rate in terms of your muscles and how many calories you're really burning over the course of a day. That's part of it. Another big piece of it is a decrease in your olfactory nerve, which right now with COVID, we're hearing a lot about loss of smell and taste.
Yeah.
And you can talk to anybody who has it. It's no fun to eat if you can't smell it or taste it. So our olfactory nerve does decrease in efficacy as time goes on. So then we can't smell as much, and then we don't enjoy food as much.
It's so much fun to get older. I just want you to know that. Well, then, if we have decreased appetites because our sense of smell is decreased, and we're in that cycle now, what can we do to adapt for these changes, I guess? Eat fewer big meals, more snacks, eat certain types of food. What do you recommend?
Well, it becomes an issue of personal preference to some extent, certainly,
Of course.
in terms of what foods you like and how to incorporate those. And really, you have to, I think we all need to think a little bit more about what we're eating. It doesn't mean going to the fast food place for lunch. Rather than that, let's think about maybe over the course of a day what I need to eat to be healthy, and do a little bit of meal planning to decide kind of what your day looks like. And then you can incorporate and make sure, okay, well, here I got my vegetables, okay, and so then if I do this, here I can have my fruit for a snack here, and trying to kind of spread what you need over the course of a day. But it definitely does take planning. To eat healthy is it's hard work. It's honestly hard work, and especially if you don't have much of an appetite, trying to make sure that the things that you do consume have good nutritional value. It's a challenge.
I'm skipping ahead, but I wanted to, I met a gal in her mid-80s, and upon the death of her husband, she's living at home alone in great cognitive health. She has lost 30 pounds, and she was thin to begin with, since her husband's death. And she says it's because she doesn't want to cook for herself. She's, used to have a family, and you're used to cooking for everybody. And that she's, in winter weather, she's afraid to drive, so she doesn't necessarily want to make a trip to the grocery for something. She feels isolated, and it's not fun to sit in front of the television and eat your meal alone. And so she just stopped worrying about meals, as she put it. Do you see that, Dr. Johnson, in your practice? And what can we do?
Yeah, no, absolutely, we see that. As patients get older, we see more isolationism, which leads to depression and anxiety, absolutely. And it takes some creativity and a lot of work to kind of to work around this. In terms of things that they can do with their meals, I like to talk to people about making one meal and kind of turning it into a couple different things. So, if you make chicken one day, and then you can shred it the next day and put it on a salad, or you could incorporate some sort of meat into eggs or something like that to to kind of to spread things out, because otherwise it is a lot of work to make food for yourself. And especially if you're not enjoying it, you spend this time to make the food, and then you sit down and eat it, and it's not very enjoyable to eat by yourself. And that's another big piece is the isolationism of eating by yourself and preparing the food. It's very difficult.
Has made that
absolutely.
so much worse.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's very difficult for many people. And so that's where, and with COVID, right, you can't do all the things that I would recommend, which would be to find ways to touch base with people and connect with people, and whether you're making meals and sharing them, and however you can incorporate others. We know that people who, if you've heard of the blue zones, it's a gentleman from National Geographic, Dan Buettner's his name. He went around the world and studied 6 groups of people that had the greatest amount of octogenarians.
I did hear that.
Yes, so it's through National Geographic, and so then they took these groups and they kind of compared, and they said, what similar factors do all these groups have? And one of them is a plant-based diet, eating together, absolutely, like you're talking about, these kind of social connections. We know that these are things that lead to longer, healthier lives, absolutely. So at this point, with COVID, it makes it really hard to get around these things. So this is where, FaceTime is a wonderful thing, and Zoom, and however you can find these creative ways to connect. My mom is not great with technology, and so we set up an iPad and took it over and said, just touch this button. Like, this is the only thing.
And there you are. Then you can be at the other end of
right,
that even.
then she's able to, have lunch some days with my 10-year-old, and it makes a big difference.
I love FaceTime. I FaceTime with my daughter a great deal, and some of it we'll take, we'll bring the phone over and show each other what we're cooking or what we're making, and it makes it more social. It really does, for her and for me.
Absolutely.
As my husband. Is it better, and I know you don't want to be judgmental with that word better, but is it better as we get older to be overweight or underweight? So let's say a 70-year-old, 75, 80.
Yeah, so absolutely, right? All my patients up to 65, they come in the office. I'm always talking about the healthy BMI range, if you've heard of that.
Yes, oh God,
20
yes.
to 25, yes.
Unfortunately, every time.
Yes, we use it as a metric now very commonly. It's always something I discuss with people. But as we see patients, and really there's, being at the above that in the obese category certainly is, detrimental for pretty much every medical condition there is, except for osteoporosis. But as patients get older, we actually shift that BMI up, and we like people to be in like the 22 to 27 range because of the fact that we know patients who have are a little bit higher on that scale, above 65, do better. They do better with any sort of acute illness, any sort of hospitalization. They're just a little more robust and are able to tolerate any medical conditions much better. So we absolutely shift it up.
That's, wonderful news for many of us. I always thought this sounds completely dumb, but I always thought it was because if we fall, we also have more padding. So that's not one of the considerations, I guess.
Well, that probably doesn't hurt, but it's not one of the, no.
Okay. Bigger behind is a good thing.
Right.
We talked about this when you first came in. My father passed away this year. And I would say in the year that he died, he had lost an incredible amount of weight. And when we went to the physician actually used the words malnourished, which is shocking to hear about a parent in a nice community, in a nice home, and with all the food that he could possibly want or eat. Do you see that in older people with this loss of appetite? You do their laboratory work and find out that they're literally defined as malnourished?
Yeah, absolutely. Again, it comes back to nutrition choices, and it's a lot of older people, like you said, they don't want to really make full meals. They don't really, incorporate maybe all the things that they should in a week. So it becomes we talk about the tea and toast diet, because toast is easy, tastes good, there's just not a lot of nutritional value that they're taking in. So it absolutely is reflected. And then it becomes an issue of all the different manifestations that can happen in the body. Your bones get weaker as you have less vitamin D, and your muscles actually atrophy even more as you have less protein. And it just becomes a bit of a snowball. And then if the motivation's not there, which is a big piece of it, they're not motivated. It's very difficult to make good, nutritious meals for yourself on a regular basis, especially if you're living by yourself. So it absolutely is a real thing, and it's very upsetting because we do have so much access in this country.
We're so lucky.
Absolutely.
And I know that there are many neighborhoods that are food deserts. I hear that word a great deal, but we're speaking to a Hudson audience where there are grocery stores around every single corner, and we don't have a lack of ability to get the healthy food that we need. Right. Very, very disturbing when that happens. I was told that the sense of sweet is the taste bud for sweet is the last to go. Is that true or no, or My dad only wanted chocolates and candy and ice cream.
Yeah. I'm not sure that that's the last to go per se. It's certainly one of our strongest tastes, an acquired taste, like salt. Salt's purely an acquired taste, really. In terms of sweets, we're the only animals besides, I think, honey bears, right, that eat actually sugar on a regular basis.
Are we really?
Yeah, typically there's no animals that consume any sort of sweets like we do. So it's a learned taste, and it's certainly a strong one. So I'm not sure, though, about the relative ending of the taste as time goes on.
Okay, well, I just was curious about that because I wondered if that's why all he wanted was ice cream and candy and milkshakes at the very end.
Those are good choices.
If we want to, oh my gosh, we have not as much time left as I thought, but so we're going to keep going here. If you could say to a 67-year-old and a 75-year-old, here's what you should be doing. And I know, again, it's the whole judgmental thing, but if you wanted us to be in optimum nutritional health, tell me the kinds of things you would tell me if I was your patient.
So if I were going to give you like 3 general rules, I would say eat colorful. So
eat colorful.
Eat colorful. Every plate that you look down at, I want to have a lot of color on it. I don't want to see just a bunch of, pasta and mashed potatoes all kind of bland. I want to see the fruits and vegetables, bright colors. I would say eat together as much as you can because that absolutely enhances our entire experience when it comes to eating. And I would say enjoy what you eat in a healthy way. Obviously we like whatever our vices are, sweets or salty or whatever.
Chocolate cake.
Chocolate, I'm with you. I always tell patients, I'll never ask you not to eat chocolate. I'm just going to ask you to reduce the portion size. I would never do that to anyone.
No. Thank you.
But enjoy what we're eating as we're eating it. So you find things that you enjoy inside of kind of healthy guidelines.
What about eating in front of the TV?
That's probably one of the worst things you can do nutritionally. When you're eating and you're that distracted, you lose like every element of enjoying the food itself. And again, thinking about things that make us feel good when we eat a meal and savor it, whether it's just the food, whether it's, the company or whatever, we have such a better and more enjoyable experience on the flip side.
Like going to a restaurant, how lovely that used to be.
It was.
I mean, the whole banana there.
Right,
Yeah.
Absolutely. But these are the meals. This is how we enjoy food. It's not just the consumption of the nutrition. It's kind of the whole big picture. The olfactory, the taste, the company. So when you pay more attention to the meal itself, you're going to get far more enjoyment out of it. In front of the TV, you could eat a bag of chips or a fillet, and you honestly aren't going to have any increased satisfaction at the end of the meal.
That's a very good point. I think it's easy at a certain age to set up the TV trays and sit there and watch the news and eat your dinner and you're done and cleaning up and before you even know it, and you really haven't tasted as much of what you could for the dinner.
For sure.
When people come to you, do you put them, now I'm not going to use the bad word diet, but do you put them on a diet? And I don't mean diet in terms of you need to lose weight, Heidi, but a diet in terms of eat these kinds of things for breakfast and this kind of thing for lunch and for dinner and so on.
Yes, right. Diet, I consider it a 4-letter word, so I definitely don't recommend diets per se.
Thank God, really.
But I like to talk a lot about healthy eating, and so a Mediterranean style of eating is considered across the board the healthiest option for how to eat in a good, healthy way. So I talk a lot about that. I have some nice, one-page handouts. It's a pretty easy system to understand. And it talks just more about increasing fruits and vegetables, decreasing your meats, more legumes, more nuts, things like that. So it's just an easy 1-page guideline that can just help. Again, it's a guideline just to help people with it. I don't expect anyone to eat perfectly all the time. That would not be fun. And we really enjoy food. But it's a healthy way, a healthy guideline to follow.
Describe briefly the Mediterranean diet. Olive oil, I bet.
So yes, that's a piece of it. They talk about using healthier fats, plant fats, as opposed to animal fats. It's like a 9-point scale. And one of the reasons it's so recommended is because by increasing your score, if you have a score of 2, by increasing your score up to a 4, you actually have like a 25% reduction in cardiovascular risk, all-cause mortality. So it's a very beneficial diet as well. So there's 9 categories, and for each one you get like a point. So it's like 2 to 3 cups of vegetables a day, 1 to 1.5 cups of fruit a day, 2 servings of fish a week, 2 cups of legumes a week. And then it actually focuses on small amounts of meat daily and small amounts of dairy daily. And it does incorporate 1 serving of wine a day.
That's a good thing.
Yes.
That's good. So it's not meat heavy, but it's still protein? I mean, the protein, you're getting the protein from other sources like nuts.
Absolutely, and also grains, whole grains are another one of the 9 categories, so you get protein there. Right, you can, vegetarians even, you don't have to eat meat to get protein. There's many complementary proteins out there. If you're eating a well-balanced diet, you're gonna hit the recommended goal. Foods like quinoa.
I love that.
Yeah, so that's one of the only vegetable complete proteins. So it's, has protein like a, piece of meat has protein.
Okay. I think, let me quick ask we have 3 minutes. This is going to be a quick question. I have read numbers of times about eating fish, even eating tuna because of the mercury consumption. 2 times a week, fresh fish, are you suggesting, or frozen fish, or does it matter the type of fish?
It doesn't matter so much the type of fish, but yeah, about 2 to 3 servings a week was what's recommended for fish. And frozen fish is actually as fresh. It's one of the most fresh types because they flash freeze them on the boats typically. So it's like having it right out of the ocean. So frozen fish is a very good source.
There's such a negative connotation about frozen food in general. I didn't know that. All right. I will give a plug to Costco because they have some wonderful fresh fish, especially their salmon. The selection they have is just really quite amazing. I was just there yesterday picking some up. I have other things to ask you. We have 2 minutes left, so we don't have the time to do it. I just found this completely fascinating, and I really do appreciate this. It's nice to know what's happening with us as we get older with our metabolism and our appetite and what to watch for. Thank you so much, Dr. Johnson, and thank you for watching North of 60. If you would like any contact information for Dr. Valerie Johnson at Western Reserve Hospital, this information will be written on the end of the show, or you can always send me an email at northof60@gmail.com. Thank you so much for watching. Bye-bye.